The Sunday School lesson for September 7th, 2025 is Here I Am, What Now? Isaiah chapter 6, verses 1 through 8, and chapter 38, verses 1 through 5. Welcome to this channel, The Backstory and More. I am Audrey. If you are interested in knowing what happens before each Sunday school lesson, you are at the right place because I will share the backstory, read the lesson text, and offer a brief lesson summary. The backstory. Isaiah began his prophetic ministry about 200 years after the nation of Israel divided. In 931 BC, the united monarchy of Israel split into two parts: Israel, the northern kingdom, and Judah, the southern kingdom. Isaiah's ministry focused on the southern kingdom of Judah, as reflected by Judean kings listed in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 1. Surprisingly, the Lord's call on Isaiah doesn't occur until Isaiah chapter 6. This is at variance from the usual pattern of recording a prophet's call at or very near a book's beginning. Perhaps the writer wanted to establish the context of the call, which the first 5 chapters of Isaiah accomplished. The people of Judah had become a sinful nation, being openly rebellious against the Lord. A sense of self-sufficiency accompanied a facade of economic prosperity, military security, and religious arrogance. The Lord depicts his people as a vineyard that produce unacceptable fruit. In their doing of injustice, they had redefined the terms good and evil. Such was the era that Isaiah found himself in when his call came about. Verses 1 through 2. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord, high and exalted, seated on a throne, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him were seraphim, each with 6 wings. With 2 wings they covered their faces, with 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they were flying. Verses 3 through 4. And they were calling to one another, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory. At the sound of their voices, the doorposts and thresholds shook, and the temple was filled with smoke. Verses 5 through 6. Woe to me, I cried. I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. And my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty. Then one of the seraphim flew to me with a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with tongs from the altar. Verses 7 through 8. With it he touched my mouth and said, See, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, and your sin atoned for. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send? And who will go for us? And I said, Here am I. Send me. Isaiah 38, verse 1. In those days Hezekiah became ill and was at the point of death. The prophet Isaiah, son of Amoz, went to him and said, This is what the Lord says. Put your house in order, because you are going to die. You will not recover. Verses 2 through 3. Hezekiah turned his face to the wall and prayed to the Lord. Remember, Lord, how I have walked before you faithfully and with wholehearted devotion, and have done what is good in your eyes. And Hezekiah wept bitterly. Verses 4 through 5. Then the word of the Lord came to Isaiah. Go and tell Hezekiah, This is what the Lord, the God of your father David, says: I have heard your prayer and seen your tears. I will add 15 years to your life. A summary. We may wonder why Isaiah's call is not recorded until chapter 6. The commission of Jeremiah and Ezekiel appear toward the beginning of their books, where we would expect them to be. Isaiah's call most likely did precede the messages of Isaiah chapters 1 through 5, but the account of the call is placed after them to make a crucial point. The first 5 chapters explain why a prophet like Isaiah was so desperately needed by God's people. Though it is quite feasible that Isaiah physically entered the temple, perhaps to pray concerning the crisis of King Uzziah's death or near death, the grandeur of all that Isaiah saw suggests that his vision was of the heavenly temple. One detail in the scene especially caught Isaiah's eye: the train of his robe. The Hebrew word translated train refers to the hem of a garment. The fact that just this part of the Lord's robe filled the temple testified to the overwhelming power and majesty of the one who occupied the throne. This is the only place in the Bible where seraphim are mentioned. In the ancient Near East, covering the feet and covering, or usually bowing, the head were expressions of homage, used especially in the presence of kings. Isaiah himself would soon acknowledge that he was in the presence of the king. Isaiah heard the angelic creatures proclaiming the holiness of the Lord to one another. This experience seems to have had an unforgettable impact on Isaiah, since he, more than any other Old Testament writer, used the expression Holy One of Israel. Isaiah's awe inspiring vision reached a climax as the doorposts began to shake because of the thunderous sound of praise coming from the seraphim crying out to one another. The smoke was presumably the smoke from the altar of incense, which in the earthly temple stood just before the most holy place. Having experienced the presence of the holy God, Isaiah became acutely aware of his own sinfulness. His mention of his unclean lips contrasts sharply with the angel's acknowledgement of the Lord's holiness. But Isaiah's condition was not unique to him. He knew he was among a people of unclean lips. He did not say this to excuse his own condition. He was simply confessing that the sin problem was nationwide. The Lord's response to Isaiah's admission of his sinfulness was not immediate judgment, but mercy. On the Day of Atonement, burning coals were taken from the altar of incense and brought within the most holy place to atone for both the high priest's sins and the sins of Israel. It is fitting that Isaiah's lips were purified, for only when his lips were clean could he speak for God. Not only did Isaiah see the Lord on his throne, now he heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?" The word us seems to refer to God, the King, speaking in the divine council with seraphim and even Isaiah present, thus serving to bring everyone into the deliberations. With the vision having shaken his soul and his sins having been forgiven, Isaiah was compelled to respond to God's challenge to be his servant, his prophet. "Here am I, send me." Thank you so very much for listening. Please subscribe and share this video with others.